You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. It's a midweek catch-up. There's some news that's breaking and smashing and running around. And there's also a Grand Prix coming up. So we'll do a Singapore Grand Prix as well. I think today I do want to get into the Mclaren controversy a little bit because it looked like it was going to drift away. It looked like it was going to disappear, but really the teams have got their teeth into it, and the FIA have now said they're considering, maybe thinking about looking into it. So joining me on this journey is Matt Two Rumpets. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Spanners. Good to see you again. It's been so long.
Yeah, I mean, we literally have just jumped off an interview, and we did do a Patreon podcast yesterday. And I think the Patreon podcast took a form of almost us planning show notes. And it's a platform where we were, I mean, it did get a bit shouty in the Patreon pod, and it did get a bit, and another thing. So if you want to check that out, patreon.com/Missed Apex. It's our first patron show back after the summer, and that pops up in your feed. So you get a special RSS feed. It's ad-free, and it's worse content, Matt. We can't lie to people. It is worse content, but it is extra content.
It is extra content because, as we discovered on our latest road trip together, there is no way we're going to not just talk to each other constantly and argue about almost everything.
Well, I think we start off in the middle ground near each other. And then as these things escalate, and the main one we were arguing about yesterday was, has Max Verstappen's car been nerfed? So we start off in the middle, and as the more we talk, we go outwards towards the edges until until we're like deathly enemies. Anyway, so check that out. It's much looser content, but that's in the feed. Patreon.com/Missed Apex. Maria asks in the Discord chat, what is the breaking news? Well, I think the breaking news that has been reported is that the FIA are looking into the allegations that perhaps the McLaren wing is over flexing, and that is creating basically a mini DRS. Now, this has been occupying a lot of my TikTok comments and my Twitter feed this morning, because there's a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, about what the FIA are saying. So a lot of people have said, look, it passes the tests. The McLaren wing passes all the tests, the static ones, therefore everything's okay. Now, the FIA statement said, included in it, as long as a car passes the tests, regulations, and technical directives, everything's okay. It will be completely fine. We won't ask anyone to change anything. A lot of people online have taken that as McLaren have definitely passed those tests, therefore they've also passed the regulations and the technical directives. And here's where it gets complicated, Matt. There is the static tests. There is the existing regulations that say things like, it should be stable, it shouldn't overly flex. And then there was a clarifying technical directive TD34 where they were like, no, really, guys, we mean it. Please don't flex too much. So there's a big debate about the spirit of the rules, what the rules are intended to do, what constitutes a breaking of the rules. Is the test the be-all and end-all, which I think it isn't. But Red Bull and Ferrari are not letting this go. All the drivers have mentioned it at the press conferences, and it's definitely being driven by the team. So McLaren have a case to answer.
Oh, well, they do. If the FIA look at it and determine that the amount of flex between the DRS element and the main plane of the rear wing is excessive. But McLaren have a very simple answer to that. It's not in the regulations. It's a technical directive. And this is where I need to remind you of the needlessly lawyer-like
Go for it.
response that technical directives are not regulations. And in fact, until it either goes through the FIA's judicial process or gets officially approved by the World Motorsport Council, it's not a regulation. And teams can dispute the interpretation of the race director, which is essentially what a technical directive is. The race director is telling you a thing is legal or illegal. It's not an actual regulation like the static tests are. So there's this boundary of possibility and probability that all the teams exist in technically, where they try to go as far as possible without getting a rap on their knuckles from the ruler, which is what McLaren is looking at possibly right now, but we've not heard an official word as to the FIA's determination yet.
So my thinking is the fact that they've said we're looking into it, and there was something like the boundaries are being tested again or something. There was something along those lines. The fact that they're looking into it, to me, dispels the whole, well, they passed the test because then that's it, right? It can't be a case of, well, they've passed the test because that's it. Otherwise, the FIA wouldn't be needing to make these statements. They would just release one line, which was they passed the static tests. That's it. So there is obviously more to it than just passing the tests. They're the governing body. Now, Mike Caulfield, actually, former Haas chief strategist, put out a tweet saying they would need more than the video evidence to take action. And I think that, but what other evidence could there be? Surely only you'd have to stick it in a wind tunnel at Baku speeds. But all I'm saying is it can't be just a case of static tests because they are looking at it. They're saying they're looking at it.
Well, they're looking at it, but what they don't say is why they are looking at it. Are they looking at it because they want to immediately approach Mclaren and say, look, we feel like the gap between your things is excessive and we'd like for you to trim it, which is really all they could do? Or are they looking at it because they want to try and formulate a test that will keep all the teams from doing it? And, McLaren's response to this will be like, well, no, you can't just come along and tell us to re-engineer our entire rear wing in a single thing. You need to give us some time. And then they'll re-engineer it so it doesn't do it quite as much. And the FIA will then be like, well, no, that's not, it needs to be closer than that. And then suddenly we're at the end of the season anyway. So
it is opening, though. It is opening. Unless there's something wrong with the pictures.
They all do to some extent, though.
To that extent.
Well, again, this is just simply someone looking at the design guidelines and designing a piece, and then aeroelasticity is an inarguable property of all things and free stream air.
Okay, so the advantage of this is not just that you're reducing drag. You're reducing drag on the straight in the same way that DRS does. If you can open up that gap and you can have a bit more air going through, that means you can afford to then have more downforce in the corners and have the same straight line speed. So it's a massive advantage if you can do it. And it does look like they have done it. It's just whether it's legal or not.
Yeah, well, it's a question of what actions will the FIA take? The simple thing to do, and the thing that would put it into it is they would say, look, we are going to class this design as a movable aerodynamic device. You need to get rid of it, and you have 2 races,
Perez,
or 4 races, or whatever.
Checo Perez quoted as saying, it's clear that it's out of the regulation. It's an illegal car, but it seems like it's allowed. I'm very surprised. That's quite it's very blunt, isn't it? Isn't that legally problematic?
Wasn't he the same one complaining about unfairly being defended against? And just go back a few years and look at some pictures of Red Bull's rear wing and just tell me that this is not a pot and kettle situation.
I get quoted all the time. Yeah, but a driver said this, and that proves it. So why can't I do that? I'll do that as well. Look, this is we can do the full beans of what's been in the, it's been reported everywhere. This is an FIA statement. The FIA is closely monitoring the flexibility of bodywork on all cars, the Mclaren, and reserves the right to request teams to make modifications at any point in the season. So it's setting out the stall straight away. If we want McLaren to change their wing, we can get them to change their wing. However, if a team successfully passes all deflection tests and adheres to the regulations and technical directives, they're deemed to be in full compliance and no further action will be taken. Now, this is the one where I've had so many people really struggling with just basic reading comprehension. It's properly wound me up this morning. They look at that phrase and they go, well, it's passed all the deflection tests. It's passed the tests. Therefore, no further action will be taken. There's 3 distinct parts. I'll say it again because it's going to come up in the YouTube comments. If a team successfully passes all deflection tests, that's one, and adheres to the regulations, that's a second separate one. And technical directives, that's a third separate thing. So they're saying, right, we know about the tests. We are now determining whether it passes 2 and 3, the regulations and the technical directives. The FIA is currently reviewing data and any additional evidence that has emerged from Baku and is considering any mitigating measures for future implementation. So, as to Mike's point, there's video evidence, but they might also be able to pull data that backs up if they've, say, gained a significant straight line advantage that they can't explain any other way. This is part of the standard process when scrutineering technical legality, and the FIA retains the authority to introduce regulatory changes during the season if required, i.e. we can nerf this if we want to. Interesting note, and this was Stuffy that dragged this up, Matt. After Baku, I think it was Piastri's car, had the post-race inspection, and they're all online, these post-race inspections, tested for... Oh, no, that was asymmetric braking. That's a completely different thing. I beg your pardon. Well, I'll mention rant about that later.
Yeah, and it just because they've added to the regulations, it's now part of the checks that the cars automatically undergo when they're picked for a random inspection. And that's different to which I saw you looking online, the planks that got inspected last year because Mercedes accidentally ran a slightly too low ride height. That was because there was actual telemetry that tipped them off.
Okay, so I got mixed up there. That's part of a different argument. We are not having the Verstappen nerfed argument again. I've had enough for now. I already won on
There's
the Patreon
so many good
pod.
arguments these days. Where do we start? Really?
Okay. So look, none of this is to say that I think McLaren are cheating, right? So I do think they're doing that thing that everyone is saying they're doing, but whether or not it's in the regulations is the question. I think it exists and it's there. My main argument is that the FIA can do something, and they're making it pretty clear that they can do something despite them having passed the static tests.
Yeah, well, it's pretty weird for a regulatory body to say, oh, we can't really do anything about things we consider to be illegal. Of course, they're going to say that. I'm just looking at how many races we have left, and I would be genuinely surprised if they're basically going to say, we don't like it, and we plan to write regulations to prevent it. But if you went to McLaren right now and said you have to completely redesign your rear wing, McLaren would say, okay, how much extra room do I get in the cost cap? And I see that as also being a reasonable argument.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so, for example, like DAS, the thing where Mercedes could move the steering wheel to change the toe of the tyre for either warm-up or tyre saving, they looked at that, and I think the general feeling was, oh, well done. Oh, that's really good, but we can't go down that path because it's just going to be too expensive for everyone to copy you. Therefore, we're nerfing it, but enjoy it. They had it for the whole season, didn't they?
And this often happens. They'll be like, okay, clever, congratulations, you get a gold star kid, but that's not going to fly next year. And then they write it out of the regulations in a way that makes sure no other team will bother to spend the money chasing it.
So it could be that where they just go, oh, nice one, you got around it. However, we really don't want that for next year because it's a bit of a dark path to go down. Or they could say, we think you're doing something wrong. Maybe we don't have the data to do it, to look at it, but we know we don't want to see it anymore. So we're really closely monitoring it. We don't want to see anything like that again. Therefore, come to COTA with something that more complies with, I don't know, is the spirit of the rules a thing? The intention of the rules. In my mind, you have a rule because you want a thing to not be done. And then you have a test as a tool to monitor if anyone is doing the thing they're not supposed to do. So if you are able to circumvent the test, but still do the thing you're not supposed to do, well done, you've escaped the hunter, but you're still breaking the rule.
Yeah, and the thing about this is, I suspect, do you remember when Red Bull had the DRS flaps that would open by themselves at high speeds? And that was like an issue for their...
That was such a giveaway.
Like this is every team always thinks about this when they're designing these systems. And the FIA was like, yeah, it's not supposed to do that, but obviously, it's not necessarily an advantage when you get that kind of flutter either. So we will accept your explanation. This is a mechanical oopsies and good luck fixing it. And it nerfed them a bit because they couldn't always use the correct specification of rear wing because the one they were supposed to use, they couldn't trust mechanically. It took them some time to sort that out. We've not seen anyone make a deal out of this until after Baku and Monza. And those are the highest speed tracks we see all year long. If we're not hitting close to 340 kilometers an hour on the straight, you probably aren't going to see that much deflection because a lot of it is going to be down to the amount of load that's being placed on that element. So we're going to go to COTA. They might not change anything. And the gap might be very, very close to what we see from other teams.
Oh, we've just wasted our time. Piastri's just denied it.
Well, there you go. A driver who's denied it, so clearly it's not an issue.
He said, I mean, it's legal, so yeah, as long as it passes the tests, we get tested a lot and it passes, is what he says. So that shuts that one down. Oh, sorry, he adds on the end, at the end.
I see. We're going to get lots of positive emails from the Australians after today's stream.
I'm an English cricket fan. Just come at me. I don't care. I'm used to it. So that's a work in progress. But a lot of the teams are fully in attack mode over it. And if you're Red Bull and you've been nerfed by the FIA, allegedly, some people think
they've been nerfed multiple times, just not necessarily this season.
So I know you're still a holdout on the Max.
I said not necessarily. I mean, I have admitted previously of the plausibility of that argument based on the data. I'm not yet convinced of it.
No. And there's been 20 coincidences, and that's why he's had 7 cars overtake him in the season, have medium merit as well. We'll see. I will go where the evidence goes because I want to be on the right side. So if the evidence moves away the other way, I'll follow it as well. I flip-flop with evidence. But we'll see. I think that one's not going away. But if Red Bull feel like they've been nerfed, then they're going to angrily go after what is now the dominant car in the McLaren, and they are going for it. So I think it's going to be controversial either way, and it might be their only hope of pegging Norris back at this point.
Yeah, well, I think Red Bull are at the throw it against the wall and see what sticks phase. Because if you recall earlier in the season, they were complaining a lot about the Aston and Mercedes front wing and flexi stuff. What that suggests to me is a lot of the teams have followed a design path that use that aero elasticity, and Red Bull chose not to do it. And they realized that even if they were to copy that wing design, it wouldn't help the rest of their concept. So they're sort of stuck out of a development path that's allowed a lot of the other teams to make progress against them. And so they're just going to complain about anything that turns up. And once that person put that video up, once they spotted it very cleverly, I wish I could find the original person who did it, because that was a brilliant bit of evidence gathering. Once that came up, you knew it was going to wind up here, because no team that isn't already doing that wants a team to be able to do that more than they're currently doing it. And that's really what this argument is about.
So a later quote from the BBC, thanks Mark for putting it in there, saying an FIA spokesman has said it's passed all tests with regard to the flexibility of the bodywork and complied with the rules. Now that's a slightly different wording and interpretation. So, and in that it's saying that they're looking at future implementation. And I think that's the most likely of those outcomes we were talking about anyway. The wording from the FIA this morning didn't feel aggressive enough to be able to say we're about to disqualify them from the previous 6 events. So it's whether it's going forward. Well, the future is Singapore and Kota. That's the future. 2025 is also the future as well. But like I said, I think people are getting lost in the wording because the FIA are sort of trying to make clear that they've passed the tests, that's fine, but there is still things they don't want the cars to do. So if they found that the cars are doing a thing they don't want to do, we will have the power to make those changes.
Yeah, and we absolutely agree. Sorry, audience. It is by far the likeliest thing that they will simply make sure teams can't do this next season, because again, there's just not that much of the season left.
All right, then. That's fine, you nincompoop, you Wally, you turnip. See how I insult you in a kind way without using offensive language? See how mindful...
Or comparing me to Waldorf or Statler or whichever one it was.
Waldorf. See,
so I'm not gonna let that go, Christina. I'm just not.
Christina compared us to Statler and Waldorf. I am very mindful of language on this show. And I don't think it's unreasonable for a show like ours, Kyle, to not mention things like Kyle mentioned on the race review just because I was in America and couldn't supervise them. And
all right, teachers away.
And I think it's okay to say in a professional environment, which we treat this as a sort of office environment, that, you know, we don't sit and do expletives and swear words, because to me, there's an inventory of words that are designated as swear words that carry some power because we give them power. So we have a social contract that those words have meaning. They have power. They can be used to denote aggression or extreme emotion, or can even be threatening. So, I choose to have an environment professionally in Mr. Apex where we don't have that. But that's the contract I've sort of made with you guys as a creator audience contract. And it means that you can put it on in the car, you can put it on in the office, and no, but it will never raise an eyebrow or be deemed as inappropriate. So Formula One are now having a look to say, should they ban the drivers from swearing? And I bet 90% of people are going to say, well, they're athletes. Just let them swear. It's part of it. Max Verstappen says, I think it starts with not broadcasting at all, not giving the opinion for people to hear it in general. That would help a lot more than putting bans on drivers. I couldn't even say the F word, and it's not even that bad, right? I mean, the car was not working. The car is effed. And excuse me for the language, but come on. What are we? 5-year-olds? 6-year-olds? Even if a 5-year-old or 6-year-old is watching, they will eventually swear anyway. This is not changing anything. That's a quote from Max Verstappen from the race. I've got that. So I'm on one extreme, Matt. I know the Europeans really don't care, that the Danes and the Dutch, they really don't care about that. On their broadcast, they'll swear a lot. So you're always hearing David Croft on the Sky broadcast going, oh, apologies for anyone deeply, deeply offended by that language. I don't think it's a case of being offended. I think it's just a case of creating a professional environment. So I'm going to vote that they're not allowed to say the naughty words on the radio.
I'm going to completely disagree with you there. Radio calls should just be rated NC-17 or may contain swearing, and then you can opt in to them if that doesn't bother you. I, for one, don't want to lose the immediacy and authenticity of driver reaction and emotion. And because they're adults, they react in adult ways. I mean, we've spent time together off the show, and neither one of us talks exactly like a pastor, do we?
No, I talk like an ex-squaddy, I suppose.
Exactly. This is my point. So I would hate for the radio to be taken away. But when you're in that moment as an athlete, and I know you've probably been in similar situations in your different careers, and certainly when I was racing bicycles in my careers, you react, and then the filters come down. And that is one of the things that I do love about having access to all the driver radio.
I don't think it would be that hard to change your mindset to go, hey guys, if they wanted to go down this route and say, we just want it to be like really, family friendly, that it could be broadcast everywhere. So, really do mind your language. We're not going to hang you if you get it wrong, but there might be a little fine that goes to a charity. All I'm saying is, I'm not saying you should. I'm saying if they went down that path, it isn't that hard to get into a mindset where you don't swear in certain situations or say, I'm going to bleeping kill that guy or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you see how I speak in real life. Have I ever done that on the radio? Only several times.
Exactly. And again, this is what bothers me about it. They choose which messages to broadcast. I mean, come on, why are we going to ask the drivers to censor themselves when there is a broadcast medium, if you're watching a television broadcast, that chooses these messages to be played? Either beep out the swear words or choose ones that don't have them. I mean, I, for one, want to hear about the diff settings on entry to turn 7. For example, maybe not everybody does, but that's what you're going to be left with if you get rid of all the expletives. And two more things. One is English is not necessarily everybody's first language, so they learn it differently. And the second thing is, this is also, we're putting our culture filter over a more global driver population, which also is something that perhaps needs to be considered. Yes, it would be great because I have kids that I don't want to hear swearing all the time. That's great for me. But for a lot of other people, it just simply doesn't matter. It is an interesting debate, but I will come down on the side of free speech, baby.
Freedom. Come on, eagerly. Let's go. Freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm definitely applying my cultural filters from being in polite British society to that. So it's more, can you just go, okay, you're an athlete, you're driving a really fast race car, but when you press the button, We've just got a professional procedure for that. I mean, you can swear all you want in your helmet without pressing the button. So I don't think, you could go down that path and ask them, just mind your P's and Q's. So when I was there with the kids, I don't want to watch a broadcast in the afternoon where it's all just effing and jeffing constantly, because then they do pick that up and they go, Mr. Reddy, Vivi has said some very naughty words and we wonder where she's got this from. Well, it wasn't me, it was Max Verstappen, please.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But again, this is a broadcast decision. I mean, you're going to complain about what the broadcaster chooses to put on air. And I think the driver should be able to talk to their engineers however they talk to their engineers. And if you want that level of access, family friendliness, which is reasonable from a product point of view, then it's on your broadcaster to fix that and not just broadcast it and then blame the drivers like they had no agency in choosing what went out.
Sam W in our Discord, they says there's a good point on E2L. I don't know what that is. Poor old Danny Rick. Surely AI can replace the words with random fruits and vegetables. You see how I have to drive this carroting thing? You see, I have to drive this carroting thing? We could do that. Or, do you know what? The beeps are fine, though. Like the fact that there's a bit of a delay and they stick some beeps on it, that's okay.
They're delayed anyway. We never get the radio messages in real time.
It's not the biggest deal in the world. However, I've long said, in a work environment on telly in the afternoon, maybe just a little bit of self-discipline and, and see who can come up with the best replacement words. So in Battlestar Galactica, they just replaced it with frack to get past the censors. So that's what they can do. Like, what do we do here? We call people turnips, Why not?
Yeah.
It wouldn't take much. That's all I'm saying. Just think, why won't anyone think of the children?
Yeah, no, I'm still going to put it on the broadcasters to do that. And the drivers are busy enough in the cockpit. The last thing they need to worry about is accidentally letting a sweary slip in while they're busy complaining about the car to their engineer.
Or there's like a $1,000 limit swear jar. And then one of them just goes, do you know what? I've got a lot of money. Here we go. And then just
imagine if they handed out penalty points for that. There'd be a race with no drivers.
Okay, well, that's all we've got out of that carroting story. And Danny Rick. So, really surprising to hear Helmut Marko go, you're going to hear stuff, you're going to hear things after Singapore, and then Ralf Schumacher, I have no idea how connected Ralf Schumacher is or what he does for a job, says Lawson is coming in after Singapore to replace Danny Rick. Now, Danny Rick is not ruling it out, but he's saying we'll see after the race. He feels confident. He feels okay. He's got a lot more to give. But Max Verstappen sort of gave, I don't know if he's given it away, but he went, well, if this is Ricciardo's last race, he can be really proud. He's had a great career. He can do other form of racing, or he can go and relax on the farm.
Yeah.
So what do we reckon? Guess. Is he in or out after Singapore? Guess.
I think he's out. I think they signed a contract with Lawson to give him some races, and that's what's going to happen. And the interesting thing about that, because we were speaking with Mike Caulfield a couple of weeks ago, is he did mention that Ricciardo got a particularly bad strategy. I thought maybe this is offline. And this is not the first bad strategy he seems to have gotten from the Visa Cash App people. So if you're tired of alternate brake theories, we nerfed Ricciardo on purpose to make it easier to get rid of him. Conspiracy can now easily take that place.
I'm in. So interesting thing with Lawson, it's basically if they don't run him in 5 or 6 races, they can lose him. Like he can sign for someone else. I think seems to be the general thing. So that kind of fits the conspiracy. If this is his last race, then Lawson would run the remaining 6 Grand Prix and therefore be kept on as a Red Bull driver. But presumably that would be it for Ricciardo. He's not getting promoted. I think Perez has locked down that seat just with that Baku drive alone.
I mean, if I was Mercedes or Ferrari or even Aston, the first thing I would do is sign him as my test and reserve driver and ask him everything he knows about Red Bull.
That's a great point.
Team.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's exactly what I do.
How much would he have learned by being at VCARB? We're still calling it VCARB. I'm not sure.
He's friends with everybody. imagine how many people he knows at the team.
No, I think the more realistic one is if he's got this race, I don't know, go and win it. If he goes and wins this race, do Haas suddenly change their plans, or do, I don't know, Audi change their plans?
Audi, maybe he puts himself on Audi's radar, but they seem to already know who they want. There's just not
Haas no.
The seats are all spoken for, and everybody now is in the, if we have a promising rookie, we're going to give him the next year and a half to get up to speed before the 26 regulations come in. And I think he's fallen afoul of the timing in the way that a lot of the upcoming rookies fell afoul of the experience. Obviously costs less money than rookies. So yes, we recognize you have talent, but the experienced people tend to put it in the wall a lot less.
Yeah. Well, I think my feeling is it's a big, strong rumor. He's out, and that could well be the end. But it's almost a shame that they don't just say it now, so that he has this last race, a little farewell tour, because he's given. Let's say the results haven't been there this season, or the McLaren years, or when he was head to head with Verstappen at the end. It was sort of, the writing was on the wall a little bit. That's why he left. But he's given the sport so much, and from a personality point of view, driven it forward with his appearances on Drive to Survive, given everything on interviews and pit lane reporters, like one of the most generous interviewers out there, always gives people something, and you go, that he deserves definitely to have a proper send off and a proper goodbye. I would hate to see him killed off screen, as it were.
Yeah, well, I mean, if depending upon the contract with Lawson, you might see him get to come back for the last race, for example, to have a proper goodbye. And Red Bull is ultimately a marketing company. They will have had a very careful think about this, and they won't want it to look bad. They won't want the optics to be bad. And I think Formula One in general won't want to see the other side of Danny Ric, because, as you mentioned, he's a real character. I think he's probably one of the most popular drivers, despite his Australianness. And see, I'm picking up on you there.
Yeah,
you're gradually turning me.
Look, no. Do you know why I'm upset? Because the Australians, it was an Australian produced show on Sunday and an Australian hosted show, and it was a little too good. I think we got to bring them down a peg or two.
Right. Okay. Fair. You got to keep them. Just take the knees out a little bit, so they don't
get cocky, kid.
Yeah. But on the other hand, Lawson is also from that general area of the world, so they'll have someone from their side of the equator to root for still. And
Piastri.
And well, I'm really interested in how Lawson does, because he sort of went through the Super Formula finishing school. And of all the people walking into a cockpit last season, he to me started off the best. I know people say Piastri is doing great now, but it was a long learning curve. He seemed to be more on top of the car in general when he started. And I'm curious to see if that will hold up over a longer stretch across more tracks, or if he'll have the same growing pains as the other rookies did.
From the other side of things, from the Yuki Fosi over here, we've dispatched Danny Ric. Gone. Done. He's not being dropped for Lawson, is he? Tsunoda, they've seen the data, right? And then you bring in Lawson, who everyone agrees is amazing. And then Yuki goes and puts him in his place, shows him some manners, and that's it. It will be undeniable. And Tsunoda continues his journey to GOAT status.
Well, he'll continue his journey to why won't they promote him to the top team status is my opinion. There's a reason they're not doing it. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's really that performance based. It may be contractual because the Honda thing or whatever. They don't want to talk about it, but it's just kind of a bad look if you've got someone doing clearly the best at a team. You have an opening or an upcoming opening, and you're just like, no.
But you can't control what decisions other people make. You can only control what you control. And on track, it's been fine. You can maybe argue he has too many little quiet stretches, but when he's on it, he's on it. Chat, are you saying poor Yuki was assaulted at Baku? I'm a Tsunoda fan. How I missed that bit of the. Who did they blame on the Missed Apex show? Don't tell me they blamed Stroll for that. That was Yuki all day long. Turned in on Stroll. No?
I don't know. Sam W is typing. We'll get the answer.
Right, okay. No.
Probably with one finger.
No, it was unnecessary. You know, it's early on in the race. There's a car that exists there, and you've gone and cut them off. That's that was a bit silly from Tsunoda. So right, let's get into a Singapore preview. Singapore is both brilliant and rubbish, and here's the reasons why. But it is, isn't it? It's a real mix. Most Singapore Grand Prix are your typical street circuit processions, and it doesn't really matter how high the tyre wear is because you've got the aero wash bouncing off the walls from 6, 7, 8 seconds back. Nobody wants to lose track position. Therefore, it's very Monaco-esque, where you make sure that you're really preserving your tyres as slowly as possible, and then it's all about a little bit of a dash to the pits, but really the gaps are so big that you're not going to get an undercut anyway, so everyone just ends up pitting at the same time. And broadly speaking, that's how the race goes. Now, that's not to say it isn't a great racetrack and it isn't spectacular. This is like the OG night race spectacular street track. This was the original destination Grand Prix that, you know, this was Miami. You know, this was Vegas of its time. So Singapore has its place and has done on the Grand Prix calendar. And every now and then, it throws up a gem like 2017, Matt. I still sometimes, I wake up in the morning and I go, oh, remember that 2017 start? That was magnificent. Yeah. That was magnificent. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a bit.
Okay, well, let's talk about Singapore. Singapore is one of the races that I class as the business race. I think Vegas is one.
Sure.
I think Monaco is one. Absolutely. And Singapore is one. It's where if you are a sponsor at Miami, if you're a sponsor of a big corporation, that's your destination to go and do all your fancy business stocky deals that we don't really care about too much here, except for some of the people in the chat. And that's fine. I'm with you there. They do matter. What's interesting about Singapore this year is they've added a 4th DRS zone that looks like it goes from panel 16 through panels 1 and 2, which suggests that it's going to be the end of the lap down through the down through the start finish straight along. So we've got 4 DRS zones now. That potentially changes things.
That's a brave move. That's a positive move. I like that, to try and keep the cars, at least keep them closer. And then we have to remember that last year was the first year without it jinking under the tunnel and going through the stadium.
Yeah, they got rid of that chicane. Yeah. Which I know that made you very happy. You heard days of celebration about that on the show.
One chicane down, just the rest of them to go.
And it's a more normal thing for street circuits, but there has been a substantial amount of resurfacing again. So
really? Also, okay.
Yeah. Turn 3 to turn 8, 10 to 12, 14 to 16, and 16 to 17 have all been resurfaced. Probably just general wear and tear because these are public roads, which is also interesting because as I'm remembering now, Red Bull don't do particularly well on curbs, which means that they're going to struggle with the bumpy pavement they're going to encounter there. Yeah. So if you're a Red Bull fan and you're wondering, are they getting on top of it? And, you know, Christian Horner's come out and said they went the wrong way with Max's setup for Baku. I wouldn't hold out a great deal of hope. This was a bogey circuit for them last year, and there's no reason to think they'll be better this year. I would wait until I get to Circuit of the Americas to put a proper marker on where they are now.
I'm going to pause the conspiracy theory for Singapore, because even if Red Bull were dominating, you would expect them to be drawn back into the pack for the Singapore Grand Prix. So I will pause that. You know, when he comes in P8 behind Perez, I ain't going to say a dicky bird. I'm not going to say anything. I'll wait till Circuit of Americas, and then we'll resume that.
And then we can resume the endless bickering. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I think expectation management is key here, like it is in Hungaroring or Baku. And you kind of go, wow, maybe 1 in 3 kicks off. If you get a safety car at the right time, it could be interesting. Or what do we need? What's the special sauce? The secret ingredient? Yes, we do. We want it. Rain. The rain is scheduled, I think.
Well, I mean, it's Singapore. It could always potentially rain. The rain usually happens during the day, makes the circuit green, makes it very hard for teams to get track evolution right. And you're essentially going out of, it's not a sprint race this weekend, is it?
It is. No, it's not. No. No,
Okay.
Circuit of the
Nah, I
Americas.
don't think I could handle that after the last weekend.
They've got to be
very busy around
careful.
here.
They can't do sprint races at the tracks that are traditional follow my leader one stoppers.
Yeah, it's so you go out of P3, you have to guess the evolution for qualifying. You inevitably either on the Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon get some massive thunderstorm that makes the track green again. And so now are you going for the qualifying setup that won't work at all because you're starting out on a green track, or are you guessing it's going to be a green track and then it doesn't rain and then you've really put your foot in it? It's got to be a tough one for the teams because a lot of the decisions are going to be based on meteorology, which we all know is not, although very precise, the most accurate thing in the world.
What if you? Sorry,
yeah.
I was just saying. Good. Well, I work at home.
That's not good.
I work at home. Goodbye, wife. Hello, cat. Yeah, your weather prediction looks correct, as in the rain dissipates towards the evening. However, it is storms. So there is a chance it chucks down a lot of liquid, and it's not going to be enough bright sunshine to clear it. So we might have a sprinkling, we might have a damp track. It's not unheard of. 2017 was still a damp track, if I recall correctly. And then the Ferraris, the glorious Ferrari squeezed Verstappen. And I think the most perfect thing about that was, even as an Alonso fan, it was funny to see him gain about 10 places off the line. The best start I've ever seen him make. And then he got wiped out by Raikkonen coming back across the track. I go, that's a fair amount of fun in that.
Yeah, no, and let's not recall the end of the race last year with Sainz and Russell in the wall. Was that last year? Sainz and Russell in the wall. And
yeah.
That was a very good one.
No, that was not Sainz in the wall. Russell in the wall.
It was Russell in the wall, but it was Sainz. He won the race.
No, it was Sainz in front of one of the McLarens, giving them DRS.
Giving them DRS to keep.
Russell couldn't then overtake, but Hamilton on fresher tyres was charging through and catching up so quickly that we was just screaming to just let him have a go. You let him have a go at the McLaren and then give it back later. He's done that in the past, and then Russell ends up putting it in the wall.
Yeah, the thing that I wanted to mention when you talk about why this race is particularly tragically dull, often, I think it's really just does come down to the pit delta. It's 28 seconds. Oh. You're not gonna make up 28 seconds on an alternate strategy, no matter what tires they give you.
And you're not going to get an undercut that's going to make up for the gaps. I don't think it's going to be a huge undercut, is it? Oh, well, it might be big, but it might be a big undercut. But I think the gaps tend to be bigger.
But then you have traffic to consider. Which we saw play out last week with Piastri getting ahead of Perez because Norris held him up. If you get stuck in traffic on your pit exit, your attempted undercut is, it's very, very toast. I'll just say that.
Okay, so at the moment, let's put our chips down. So it could be a strong weekend. Most likely, it's going to be a strong weekend for McLaren and Ferrari. So we expect to see McLaren versus Ferrari, don't we?
Yeah. McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes there or thereabouts, and Red Bull, a very unknown quantity, and then a big gap back to Aston and the rest of the field.
All right. Well, that prediction wasn't very exciting because we agree completely. So yeah, it's probably going to be a tricky weekend for the Red Bulls, but we're talking it down. But there have been some spectacular and interesting Singapore Grand Prix. We are going to do a race review on Sunday. I think it's going to be about 5 p.m. UK. So maybe 3 hours before our standard time, but we're just working that out now. So keep up with our socials. The Missed Apex accounts have been neglected, really. So we don't have a PR guy anymore. So just follow mine at Spanners Ready and Spanners Ready on Instagram. I'm posting more on Instagram. Missed Apex TikTok. I'm starting to do just little reaction videos to things that come out. So things that I would normally tweet and have an argument about on Twitter, going to have an argument about them on TikTok instead. There you go, Matt. You're going to do some TikToks?
Yeah. Good. Yeah, my wife is doing TikToks now. Is this big? This is going to be the thing where someone's eventually going to have to make me a TikTok account.
You're just going to have to get on there. Here's what I reckon. That's all you do. That's all people do. They just go, here's what I reckon. And then someone does a comment and then you click that comment and you go, here's what I reckon about that comment. And it just goes in an endless loop.
Endless cycle of.
Yeah. And then I assume you become a millionaire from that. Yeah. Follow Matt's wife at Amanda Weaver so at A Weaver on Twitter. and presumably that on TikTok as well. The new F1 romance book is out. It is called The Fast and the Reckless, and it's been selling like hotcakes, and it's available in Barnes & Noble and online, and there's an audiobook as well. We are going to get Christina and Matt to do a review of that soon. I'm gonna keep out of it, Matt, because I don't really want to read.
Your delicate British sensibilities cannot handle the heat.
If I don't want swearing on the team radio, I hardly want to delve into a mucky version of Formula One, do I? No. It's not very on brand.
Wow.
It's not very local radio presenter. It's not beloved.
Again, these are relationship driven ultimately, and the dialogue. I will say the wife is extremely good at dialogue, but the feedback we've gotten so far has been positive, and so thank you.
I read the first 4 pages, and it's immediately pervy. Immediately, give me that. Oh, it's all romantic. All right, let's get out of here. Looking forward to the race. Follow Matt, follow me. I'm sure there'll be some show notes. Patreon.com/Missed Apex if you want the somewhat heated argument from yesterday. What did you call it? Disagreeing loudly?
Yes, I call it disagreeing loudly. Yes.
Okay. Until we see you next time, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast.